What's up, you guys? This is Rob from The Gay Guy Plays, and today on this snapshot, we're continuing what I am mentally referring to as the Umbral Queen series by slapping the sacrifice mods onto the Mistress of Malady herself, Saryn, with her Umbral Plague build. Now, as the name of the video implies, we will be using some of the Umbral mods that we received during the sacrifice quest, so if you have not progressed enough through the Warframe storyline, you really won't have access to them any other way. So, go ahead and knock those out, and you'll have access to some very, very interesting things later on. Alrighty, now as you can see, we have mixed things up just a little bit. I've actually got some heavy gunners, some bombards, and some corrupted ancients in there, all level 155, and I have turned invincibility off just because I wanted to show you a little bit of how the added survivability chimes in, and also, you know, maybe kick up a little bit of a challenge. Now, as you can see here, we do have ourselves a little bit of a mixing from the heavy gunner and that ancient, kind of like helping buff up just a little bit. It does kind of suck because you can't really mix enemy types together. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, how do I put this? It's kind of like they're all kind of divided on their own little areas. But as you can see, this build is really, really good at taking down large groups, and I also want to kind of post this out there because it always needs to be said. Fighting in the Simulacrum is not the same thing as fighting in real life, and I do have some clips from EOS that I will be showing you guys later. However, the one thing that I really do like about this build is it's really not that different from the variants that I gave you guys earlier. However, we did do a little bit of forming. As you can see here, we're going to go full in with some billies because it's tradition here to slaughter the billies. But yeah, what do you call this? I do have some clips from ESO where I was using it earlier, and I'll be honest, I don't feel like it was like insanely better. But then again, you know, it's literally just one form of difference from the original build that I was using. So part of me is like, well, it's good, it's really strong. It's not like mind-blowingly strong, and it's not something that you have to do. But you know, if you want to pay tribute to Miss Saryn and give her a little bit of love, we can go ahead and do that too. So let's take a look at the build. Now, for those of you guys who have never seen the previous build before, it is a little bit of a loadout because I do have the Saryn and I do have the Zod that goes along with it because they merge together hand in hand. So let's jump on in, and as you can see straight out of the gate, I am using Energy Siphon instead of, what is it called? Instead of Growing Power. This is something that I addressed in my Titania video. I'm lazy and I don't feel like putting in another polarity. However, I do feel like Energy Siphon fits really well with this, just to get yourself a little bit more energy over time and not necessarily 100% rely on Hunter's Adrenaline to do it for you. I know that there's some people in there that say, it's enough for me. Hunter's Adrenaline is enough for me. It's enough. It's not enough for me, okay? I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't feel like it's enough. I want to be able to have energy all the time. And sometimes when you kill enemies so fast because your build is good and they're dead, they can't hit you, thus you can't get energy. I'm just saying. So Energy Siphon is a part of this build. If you don't want to use it, go ahead and mod that out. Now, as you can see, the two Umbral mods we are using are Umbral Intensify and Umbral Vitality. I went ahead and crunched the numbers on using Umbral Vitality versus Umbral Fiber and kind of swapping that around between Steel Fiber and Vitality. You know how it goes. And the pairing of Vitality and Umbral Fiber gets you 3,119 EHP, as opposed to Steel Fiber and Umbral Vitality, which gets you 3,292. So as long as my calculations are correct, you will be getting more EHP out of this. Now, of course, if you wanted to go ahead and swap that out because you wanted more survivability, you could take out Umbral Intensify, put in Umbral Fiber, and just repolarize that the D into a V. But in this case, we're sticking with the D. And the big reason that I wanted to go ahead and do that is because we are using Umbral Intensify. Now, I like using Umbral Intensify in this build mainly because of the fact that we have Overextended. So it's a great way to set off Overextended and still have a little bit of power strength to boot. So Overextended and Stretch because we want our spores to spread like crazy. and then Umbral Intensify, Power Drift, and Augur Secrets to offset the, you know, the power strength that we've lost from there. Now, if you don't really care about it, you can, like, ditch Augur Secrets, because I don't really feel like you need that much power strength. You can ditch that for more range if you want to with Augur Reach, or duration with Augur Message, just depending on what you want to do with your build. That's a nice little slot there that I'm very fond of, because really that can help you tailor your build to as much as you want. Now, if you were going to swap out Energy Siphon for growing power, you could easily swap out Augur Secrets and toss in Augur Message, or even toss in Augur Reach for even more range. So that's up to you guys. That's the build. We are using 2 Arcane Graces, mainly because of the fact that we did not use Regenerative Molt on here. And if you're going to be taking hits from Hunter's Adrenaline, Arcane Grace is a great way to offset that. Now, to go along with it, we do have the Momus. Now, for those of you guys who've never seen this build before, it is basically just all status. All status. We're pushing the status card, mainly because of the fact that we're using the Momus not necessarily to kill. Don't get me wrong, you can still get a lot of kills with this, mainly because of the fact that we do have some slash procs that are coming through with there, and some viral stuff to kind of drive things home, but we also have healing return. So think about it this way: we've got a high proc weapon, and then we're also spreading spores. So you're always going to be getting at least 11 points of health back on top of the Arcane Grace. So you should be able to stay fairly healthy. The only thing that's really going to like take you out is Insta-Gibs. And really, hopefully, with as much health as you have now, you shouldn't get too many just one-shot kills straight out of the gate. We are using Exodia Force as well, which triggers off of status. So feel free, you know, it's a 50% chance to deal 200% of the weapon damage to enemies in 6 meters. So again, it's just even more like running off of status stuff. And that's basically the setup. However, I do want to jump into a little bit of EOS gameplay. I keep calling it ESO. This is not Elder Scrolls Online, but we're going to jump into some of that gameplay while I give you a couple tips that pair with the way that I play Saryn in many instances. So let's go ahead and jump into that. Alrighty, so as you can probably tell by the build, our big focus is spreading those spores and just stripping enemies away from their armor and making sure that they die. However, we do have a couple changes from the original build, and that's mainly because we are dealing with a higher amount of potency when it comes to power strength. Now, before we jump into that, I do want to go ahead and talk about how spores spread, because that kind of goes hand in hand with the way this build is working now. Number 1, spores. If a spore on its own with no encouragement whatsoever kills an enemy, that spore is not going to spread upon death. However, pretty much everything else will go ahead and spread the spore upon death. If your allies kill an enemy with spores in there, that works. If you pop a spore manually by like hitting the actual little orb and that pops, that'll go ahead and spread a spore. If you hit an enemy while you're using Toxic Lash, and remember, Toxic Lash now applies to not just your melee weapons, but your ranged weapons as well. So you got all these little guns that are spray and pray, right? Well, guess what? All of those little hits will go ahead and spread spores as well. And one of the things that I was actually not aware of, and this was interesting because I don't really use it very much these days, but Molt's Explosion, if Molt's Explosion kills an enemy, that'll actually spread the spores as well as any enemy that is inflicted with miasma upon death, they will spread spores as well. So there's a multitude of ways to get these out there, and the big thing I want to kind of put out there is these spores are a little bit more potent. So they're going to grow in efficacy a little bit faster, which means that they will be more aggressive in their kills. So since a spore kill on its own with no encouragement will not spread any more spores upon death, you do have to be a little bit more cognizant about spreading your spores with your weapons or with miasma. Miasma is really the way that I kind of do it. If I see my spore counter going down, but I do still see some spores sticking around, I'm like, bitch, you gonna help me out. I'm gonna go ahead and miasma, and because of the fact that we have so much range on this particular setup, I think it's over 200, like 230 something %, you'll actually be able to spread them fairly efficiently by just casting a miasma in the center. So especially when it comes to EOS, just find a nice central spot where you can hit multiple enemies at once, and when they die with the miasma on them, any new enemies that spawn on in will go ahead and get hit with the spores, which is absolutely fantastic and kind of like saves you from just running around blindly all the time just trying to whack at enemies or trying to use your guns to shoot them down, because sometimes we don't always have line of sight. So that is definitely something that I kind of want to encourage you guys to make sure that you are doing. But aside from that, make sure that you've always got Toxic Lash on, and make sure you're kind of like spreading those spores out like butter. Always be chasing down your spores, look for the damage numbers and kind of like follow them where they go. And again, because of the fact that your spores are more potent now, because you're no longer having to offset it with like anything too crazy. Because I wasn't going to use Blind Rage, and I didn't really want to use Transient Fortitude because I had no duration mods on this. But now you just got to get a little bit more aggressive because your spores are going to be more aggressive. Regardless, that's pretty much it when it comes to tips and tricks for this. You can see the build itself just works and it just does its thing. So I'm going to leave it right here for now. And as I want to ask you guys real quick, because I do have a couple of other people that are in my head. So I'm thinking maybe we touch Mesa, maybe we bring out a little bit of Octavia action for like the Umbral Queen series. Where do we go with this? Leave those feelings in the comments below. And as always, love somebody, hurt nobody, and touch your body. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.